It's December 1941. For more than 2 years, Europe has been burning in war. Germany has already crushed Poland and France and pushed deep into Russia. German tanks rule the land, their planes control the skies, and their submarines hunt ships in the Atlantic like hungry wolves. In Berlin, German generals feel confident. They believe victory is close. Then, shocking news arrives. Japan has attacked Pearl Harbor. The United States is now entering the war. Inside the grand halls of Berlin, some German officers smile. They open bottles of champagne, thinking this is good news. Even Adolf Hitler feels sure of himself. He declares war on America just 4 days later, mocking it as a land of gangsters and jazz musicians. He believes the U.S. can't possibly challenge the mighty German army. But not everyone is cheering. Hitler's armaments minister, Albert Speer, quietly writes in his notes, "We have awakened a sleeping giant, a country whose industrial power we cannot even imagine." Another general, Alfred Jodl, warns that American factories can build 10 times more weapons than Germany ever could. No one listens. Meanwhile, far away in North Africa, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel watches brand new American tanks arriving, clean, shiny, and painted in desert colors. In his diary, he writes, "The equipment arriving here could supply an entire army. Where is all this coming from?" Germany was about to find out. Over the next 4 years, German officers would record their growing fear in secret diaries, letters, and reports written from muddy trenches, bombed-out bunkers, and later, prison cells. They would list, one by one, the 7 things about America that terrified them most. Not rumors, not propaganda, but their own real experiences. This isn't the story of how America won the war. It's the story of how Germany slowly realized they had already lost it. March 1943. Essen, Germany. The massive Krupp steel factory is working day and night. That month, it builds 125 Tiger tanks, the pride of Germany, the strongest tanks in the world. In Berlin, officers cheer and call it a great success. But far across the ocean, in Detroit, USA, something unbelievable is happening. In just the same month, one single American factory builds 1,200 Sherman tanks. Not in a year, in 1 month. When German intelligence reports this, their leaders refuse to believe it. Air Chief Hermann Göring laughs and says it's just American lies. He thinks it's propaganda meant to scare German soldiers. But then proof arrives. In Tunisia, German troops capture an American supply camp. Inside, they find endless rows of crates, full of spare parts, engines still packed in paper, radios, tires, and mountains of ammunition. One German officer writes in disbelief, "We found more supplies in this one depot than our whole division gets in 3 months." The truth is finally clear. This isn't just an army. It's a giant machine. And the machine is only getting started. Back in America, the change is complete. Car factories now build tanks. Every 9 minutes, a brand new airplane rolls off a production line. In Michigan, Henry Ford's Willow Run plant, the biggest in the world, makes one B-24 bomber every 63 minutes, a new heavy aircraft every single hour. Germany has nothing like this. Hitler's minister Albert Speer visits German factories and later admits, "Even if we worked at full speed for 5 years, we could not match what America produces in 1." The once powerful German war machine is now being buried under American steel. In 1944, a German tank commander in France writes home, "We destroyed 9 American tanks and celebrated." The next morning, 12 more appeared. It was as if we had destroyed nothing. Where do these machines come from? They come from a country that turned its entire economy into a weapon, a nation working for one goal: victory. After the war, German General Heinz Guderian, the man who invented blitzkrieg tactics, admits, "The American soldier wasn't always more skilled, but he never ran out of bullets, fuel, or tanks. We did." By 1944, the numbers tell the story. Germany builds 19,000 aircraft that year. America builds 96,000. Germany builds 9,000 tanks. America builds 29,000. And for every shell fired by Germany, America fires 7. One German artillery officer writes in his diary, "We fire 5 shells and retreat. They fire 50 and advance. This is not war. This is mathematics." But it wasn't just the numbers. It was the system. American weapons came with manuals printed in 3 languages. Their spare parts fit every vehicle. Their supply chain stretched 6,000 miles across the ocean and still ran smoothly. German officers who studied captured American documents couldn't believe what they saw. Detailed maintenance plans, replacement schedules, even reports on the moods of truck drivers. One of them finally wrote, "They have turned war into an industry. We are craftsmen fighting against a factory." And that factory was only just beginning to roar. August 17, 1943, Schweinfurt, Germany. It's a quiet morning. Then, suddenly, the air raid sirens start screaming. High above the clouds, at 25,000 feet, more than 200 American B-17 Flying Fortress bombers roar toward the city. Each one carries 6,000 pounds of bombs, ready to destroy the factories that make the ball bearings. Tiny parts that keep every German tank, plane, and truck moving. On the ground, Luftwaffe, German Air Force, pilots run to their planes. Among them is Major Egon Mayer, one of Germany's top fighter aces. He's fought British bombers before. He knows how they fly, how they fight. But as he climbs into the sky and faces the American bombers for the first time, something feels different. The B-17s fly close together, forming a tight box-shaped formation. Each plane has 13 machine guns, covering every angle. When Mayer attacks, the sky explodes with gunfire. Bright tracer bullets fly toward him from all sides. His wingman's plane bursts into flames. Another spirals down, trailing smoke. Mayer pulls back and radios his squadron. These aren't bombers. These are flying battleships. That day, the Americans lose 36 bombers, but the Germans lose 27 fighters. And the factories below? Burning. And more bombers are already on their way. Later, during his post-war questioning, Mayer admits, "From that day on, we knew the Americans could hit any target in Germany. It was only a matter of time before they destroyed everything. The bombing never stops. The British bombers attack at night. The Americans attack during the day. Germany's cities, factories, and supply lines burn around the clock." Luftwaffe General Adolf Galland writes in his diary, "We can shoot down bombers, but we can't shoot down 1,000, especially when another 1,000 come back the next day." The B-17 Flying Fortress becomes a legend, respected, feared, and hated. German pilots call it Die Fliegende Festung, the Flying Fortress. But the worst was still to come. In 1944, a new monster takes to the skies, the B-29 Superfortress. It flies higher than any German fighter can reach and carries more bombs than any plane in history. When German officers first read about it, they think the reports are fake. No plane could possibly do that. But it's real. The B-29 shows everything that Germany cannot match: advanced technology, massive resources, and America's incredible engineering power. It even has a pressurized cabin, so its crew can breathe normally at extreme heights. It uses a computerized bomb sight that automatically adjusts for wind and altitude, a piece of technology years ahead of its time. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister, later admits, "When the B-29 appeared, we knew we had lost the race. We were improving old weapons. They were inventing the future. And it's not just the technology, it's the numbers. German factories struggle to build 50 fighter planes in a month. America sends 500 bombers in one single raid." A Luftwaffe pilot writes home in late 1944, "Today I shot down 2 bombers. I felt proud for 5 minutes. Then I looked up and saw 300 more. What can I do? What can any of us do?" The answer is nothing. By 1945, entire German cities vanish from the map. Hamburg, Dresden, Cologne. Factories are turned to dust. Roads are destroyed. Train lines are cut. The German economy collapses. In his final report to Hitler, Albert Speer writes, "The war is lost, not because of our soldiers or our tactics, but because the enemy can destroy our factories faster than we can rebuild them." The bombing campaign does more than destroy buildings. It breaks the German spirit. Civilians and soldiers alike realize there is no safe place anymore. American power can reach anywhere. A German anti-aircraft gunner writes in his journal, "We fire until our barrels glow red. We see some bombers fall, but still they keep coming. Always, they keep coming. The sky belongs to America now, but even the strongest bomber needs protection." And that's where the third great fear of the German commanders will soon take flight. January 1944, over Germany. A group of American B-17 bombers flies slowly across the cold sky, heading deep into enemy territory. Inside each bomber, young crewmen look out nervously. They know what's coming. The German fighters always come. And then, they appear. Out of the clouds dive the Messerschmitt Bf-109s, fast and deadly. The Luftwaffe has arrived. The Germans are ready to strike. This is usually the moment when the bombers start falling from the sky. But today, something different happens. Before the German fighters can even get close, new planes appear, sleek, shiny, and fast, painted in silver and green. The P-51 Mustang. The German pilots are shocked. These fighters aren't supposed to be here. They are 400 miles deep inside Germany. No Allied plane has ever been able to fly this far to protect the bombers. It should be impossible. And yet, here they are. The Mustangs dive in like hawks. Their machine guns roar. In seconds, 3 German planes are down, and the rest scatter. The bombers fly on safely to their target. On the ground, German commanders can hardly believe the reports. General Adolf Galland writes later, "The arrival of the P-51 over Germany was the death sentence for our Air Force. We could no longer attack the bombers without terrible losses. The P-51 Mustang changes everything. It's fast, faster than almost any German fighter. It's agile, able to twist and turn in a dogfight. But most importantly, it has range. With extra-fuel tanks, it can fly all the way to Berlin and back. No German plane can stay in the air that long." German ace Gunther Rommel later writes, "Fighting the Mustang felt like being hunted. They followed us everywhere, even to our airfields. They attacked us on the ground. There was nowhere to hide." The Luftwaffe pilots, once proud and confident, start losing hope. They are now fighting enemies who outnumber them, outfly them, and never seem to run out of fuel. But the Mustang isn't the only American nightmare in the sky. Another fighter, the P-47 Thunderbolt, becomes the terror of German ground troops. Huge, heavily armed, and tough as steel, German soldiers call it Die Jabo, short for Jag Bomber, the fighter bomber. They fear it even more than artillery. One German officer writes, "Artillery you can hear coming. You can take cover. But the Jabos come from nowhere. One moment the road is quiet. The next, rockets and bombs destroy everything. By the time you hear the engines, it's already too late." The P-47 is almost indestructible. Its strong engine can take hundreds of bullets and still keep flying. American pilots often return with planes full of holes and still land safely. German pilots quickly learn that shooting down a Thunderbolt takes many direct hits. Luftwaffe pilot Franz Stigler later says, "We called it the Jug, big, heavy, ugly. But it was deadly. We feared it because it could take damage that would destroy any of our planes." By the middle of 1944, the Americans completely control the skies over Europe. The Luftwaffe, once the most feared air force in the world, is collapsing. German pilots are being shot down faster than they can be trained. Experienced veterans are dying every day, and new recruits arrive with barely 50 hours of flying practice. The Americans, on the other hand, rotate their best pilots back home to train new ones. So while German skill keeps shrinking, American skill keeps growing. A desperate German instructor writes, "I'm sending boys into battle who can barely keep their planes steady. The Americans send men who've survived 25 missions. This isn't war anymore, it's suicide." The long-range American fighters do more than just protect bombers. They break the Luftwaffe's back. They shoot down any plane that takes off. They bomb runways, destroy hangars, and make sure German aircraft stay grounded. General Galland later says bitterly, "We lost the air war the day American fighters appeared over Berlin. Everything after that was just dying slowly." But America's air power was only one part of the story. Because on the ground, the Germans were about to face something even more terrifying. A silent new weapon, one they couldn't see, couldn't hear, and couldn't escape. February 1945, the cold, dark North Atlantic. A German submarine quietly moves under the icy waves. Inside, the captain, a man who has survived 23 dangerous missions, feels calm and confident. His U-boat now has a new invention, a snorkel. It lets the submarine use its engines while staying hidden underwater. The Allies will never find us, he thinks. But suddenly, boom, boom, boom. The sea explodes around them. The submarine shakes violently. Pipes burst. Men scream. The captain yells, "Emergency surface." When the U-boat bursts out of the water, the captain freezes. Right there, an American destroyer, already pointing its guns directly at them. "How did they find us?" he whispers in disbelief as he orders his crew to surrender. The answer? Radar. But not just any radar. American radar, far more advanced than anything Germany had ever built. At the start of the war, Germany had invented radar and used it well. But they never truly understood how powerful it could be. The Americans, on the other hand, became obsessed with it. They made radar smaller, lighter, and easier to use. They put it on ships, planes, and even tanks. They used radar to spot submarines, track enemy planes, and guide bombers through thick clouds. By 1944, American radar could find a German submarine from 30 miles away, even at night, in storms, or underwater. The U-boats that once ruled the Atlantic had become easy targets. Admiral Karl Donitz, the man in charge of Germany's submarine fleet, wrote in his diary, "The enemy has a device that can find us anywhere, anytime. Our losses cannot continue." He was right. Between 1943 and 1945, over 600 German submarines were destroyed. Most of their crews never came home. It became one of the deadliest jobs in the entire war. But radar wasn't the only nightmare. The Americans had another secret, something called the proximity fuse. Imagine a bullet or shell that doesn't have to hit a plane to destroy it. It just has to get close. When it's within a few dozen feet, it explodes automatically, like it knows exactly where the target is. That's what the proximity fuse did. It was a tiny radar inside an artillery shell, one of the most advanced inventions of the war. Before, anti-aircraft guns needed a perfect hit to bring down an enemy plane. Now, even near misses became deadly. German pilots flying through the sky suddenly found themselves surrounded by explosions that seemed almost alive. One Luftwaffe pilot wrote, "It feels like the shells can see us. They hunt us." Even when the Germans captured some of these unexploded shells, their scientists couldn't figure out how they worked. The tiny parts, the precise electronics, it was too advanced. Albert Speer, Hitler's Minister of Armaments, later admitted, "We knew America was ahead in technology, but we didn't realize how far." The proximity fuse alone cost us hundreds of aircraft. And it wasn't just about weapons. American equipment, from trucks to radios, was smarter, simpler, and tougher. Their vehicles had waterproof wiring. Their engines worked in rain, snow, and sand. Their tanks and jeeps were built so that any soldier could fix them quickly. One captured German mechanic said, "Your vehicles are made to be repaired by idiots. Ours are made for experts. Guess which idea wins a war?" He was right again. German machines, like the Tiger tank or the Bf-109 fighter, were powerful but complicated. They broke down often and took forever to fix. American tanks and planes were easier to build, easier to repair, and there were so many of them. A German tank commander put it simply, "One Tiger is worth 5 Shermans." But the Americans send 6. That's the heart of the story. Germany built machines for perfection. America built machines for victory. By 1945, German troops were fighting with broken equipment and empty fuel tanks. American forces had endless supplies, reliable weapons, and newer models arriving every month. After the war, General Heinz Guderian summed it up perfectly. "We didn't lose because our scientists were weak. We lost because our factories couldn't keep up. They built weapons for war. We built them for show." But even with all this technology, radar, fuses, tanks, The Germans were about to learn another hard truth. Wars aren't won by machines alone. They're won by the people who keep those machines running. A German tank unit sits in a strong defensive position. For days, they fought hard and pushed back 3 Allied attacks. The soldiers are tired, but still holding their ground. Ammunition is running low, bullets, shells, and fuel are almost gone, but reinforcements have been promised by nightfall. Night comes. Morning comes. No reinforcements. The supply convoy that was supposed to bring help is stuck far behind. The roads are bombed. Allied planes are hunting from the sky. It takes 2 full days for the convoy to finally arrive. But by then, it's too late. The German unit is gone, not defeated by better tactics, but by empty ammunition boxes. Across the English Channel, an American infantry division faces a similar problem. They're running low on supplies. They send a message for help. 6 hours later, a line of trucks arrives with everything: bullets, fuel, food, even letters from home. The soldiers eat, reload, and keep moving forward without stopping. This is a different kind of war, a hidden war, the war of supplies and logistics. And Germany is losing it badly. The German army was built for quick, lightning-fast attacks, what they called blitzkrieg. It worked beautifully at first: fast tanks, surprise movements, short battles. But this kind of system falls apart in a long, grinding war on many fronts. When the battles drag on, the German supply system breaks down completely. Here's something shocking. In 1944, Germany still relied on horses to move supplies. Over 600,000 horses were used to pull wagons full of ammunition, food, and fuel. Horses needed food and water. They moved slowly. And when Allied planes attacked, they died by the hundreds. The Americans, meanwhile, had trucks, trains, and planes for everything. Their supply system was fully motorized and organized like a machine. In France, the Americans created a special transport network called the Red Ball Express. Every single day, it delivered over 12,000 tons of supplies to the front lines: fuel, food, weapons, and more. Every day, without fail. A German supply officer, watching in disbelief, wrote in his notes, "The Americans waste more supplies in one day than we receive in a week. They throw away equipment we would repair 3 times. They have so much that they can afford to be careless." And he wasn't exaggerating. German soldiers began to notice that America's strength wasn't just in their tanks or planes. It was in the endless mountain of supplies that seemed to appear everywhere. One German soldier wrote home, "We captured an American supply dump. There was chocolate, cigarettes, canned fruit, even playing cards. This isn't food, it's luxury. How do we fight an enemy who eats better in the field than our families do at home?" The problem went beyond food. The biggest issue was fuel. By 1944, Germany was almost completely out of gasoline. Tank divisions sometimes received enough fuel to drive just 50 miles, barely enough to reach the front lines. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister, later admitted, "Our tanks are magnificent, but they are useless when they stand still for lack of fuel." In contrast, American tanks were always full. They moved freely, attacked from different directions, and never had to stop for long. Even the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, was crippled by the fuel shortage. Many pilots sat in their cockpits, ready to fly, but their planes stayed grounded. One pilot wrote bitterly, "We have aircraft, we have pilots, but we cannot fly. The Americans have everything. We have nothing." And how did the Americans keep all this going? The answer floated across the Atlantic: Liberty ships. These were giant cargo ships, mass-produced in American shipyards. Each one carried 10,000 tons of supplies, and there were thousands of them. Between 1943 and 1945, America built 2,710 Liberty ships, enough to form a constant steel bridge between the U.S. and Europe. German submarines tried to stop them, but there were simply too many. The ocean itself became a highway of American supplies. When German officers looked at captured American shipping records, they were stunned. One list showed that 400 tons of coffee were being sent to a single U.S. division. Coffee, not ammunition or fuel, coffee. One captured German officer said to his interrogators, You send luxuries across an ocean while we starve our civilians to feed our soldiers. That tells me everything about who will win this war. But the American advantage wasn't only about having more stuff. It was also about how efficiently they used it. The U.S. Army treated logistics like an exact science. Supplies were labeled, packed, tracked, and delivered on time. Requests were written on standard forms. Everything was organized, like a business operation. Germany, meanwhile, was the opposite. Its supply system was slow, confusing, and often chaotic. Fuel meant for the Eastern Front might end up in Italy. Ammunition might arrive at a base without the right weapons. Entire depots were destroyed before anyone could move their contents. General Heinz Guderian later admitted, "The Americans wage war like businessmen. They plan, calculate, and execute with precision. We fought like gamblers, hoping for miracles." By 1945, the difference was absolute. German soldiers fought hungry, with broken guns and empty fuel tanks. American soldiers fought with full bellies, working weapons, and hot meals waiting behind them. At that point, the war was no longer about bravery or tactics. It came down to numbers and organization, and the numbers were merciless. But even behind those endless supplies and machines, behind every tank, plane, and ship, there stood something that Germany could never match. April 1945, Eastern Germany. A small Waffen-SS unit is holding a village. They've been fighting for 3 long days without rest. The men are tired, dirty, and half-crazed from lack of sleep. Their ammunition is running out. The wounded lie in barns, whispering for water. Command has promised reinforcements, but no one comes. 10 miles away, an American infantry division is also fighting hard. They take losses too. But within a single day, new soldiers arrive. Trucks bring food, ammo, and medical supplies. The wounded are flown to field hospitals. By the next morning, the division is ready to move again, as if nothing had happened. This was Germany's 6th great fear. Backhand index pointing right America's endless manpower. When the war began, Germany had about 70 million people. America had 132 million, almost twice as many. But it wasn't just about numbers. It was about how each country used its people. Germany sent almost every able-bodied man to the front. Teenagers as young as 16 were given rifles. Old men were forced into local militias. Women worked in factories but were not allowed to fight. By 1945, Germany was simply running out of soldiers. America handled things differently. Their selective service system carefully decided who should fight, who should work in factories, and who should handle technical jobs. Soldiers were given breaks. After months in combat, they could go home, rest, and then help train new recruits. Their morale stayed strong. German soldiers, on the other hand, fought until they were killed or captured. There was no rotation, no rest, only exhaustion. One German officer wrote in his diary, "We kill 10 Americans today. Tomorrow, 20 more arrive. We lose 10 of our own, and get 3 new boys in return, all 16 and terrified. How can we win like this?" The truth was simple. They couldn't. But the fear wasn't only about numbers. It was about spirit. American soldiers believed in their mission. They were told they were fighting for freedom and that they'd go home when it was done. They received letters from loved ones, magazines full of good news, and warm meals. They knew they were part of something that was winning. German soldiers felt the opposite. Their letters from home spoke of bombed cities, hunger, and despair. Propaganda still promised miracle weapons and victory, but the men at the front saw only retreat and death. One German soldier wrote to his wife, "The Americans do not fight with wild fury like we expected. They fight calmly, carefully, almost like workers following a plan. But they never stop. They move forward every day, and we can't hold them back." That steady, unstoppable advance terrified German commanders. They were used to enemies who panicked, who broke under pressure. But the Americans never panicked. The difference came from how they fought. American troops didn't rush into danger blindly. If they met heavy resistance, they stopped, called in artillery or air support, waited for tanks, and then moved again. Step by step, German troops, trained for quick attacks and personal heroism, kept trying to counterattack, even when it made no sense. By 1944, this old style of bravery had become suicide. The Germans lost their best men in hopeless charges, while the Americans stayed behind walls of steel, smoke, and firepower. After the war, one German officer admitted, "We were proud of our warrior spirit. But the Americans showed us that wars are not won by dying bravely. They are won by staying alive." The mental side of the war, the psychology, slowly crushed Germany. American soldiers were well-fed, well-equipped, and surrounded by support. German soldiers were starving, cold, and often abandoned. Captured German troops later said they realized the war was lost not during a big battle, but during small, everyday moments. They remembered seeing American soldiers throw away half-eaten chocolate bars, endless lines of trucks bringing supplies to the front, American medics treating wounded Germans with kindness. One prisoner said quietly, "You Americans treat war like a job. We treated it like a crusade. But jobs can be finished. Crusades only end when everyone is dead." By 1945, many German soldiers simply gave up. Entire units surrendered without a fight, not out of cowardice, but because they saw no point in dying for a lost cause. American loudspeakers broadcast messages in German, promising food, shelter, and medical care to anyone who surrendered. Thousands listened. The human side of the war, the morale, the will to keep going, now completely favored the Americans. German soldiers fought because they had to. American soldiers fought because they knew they would win. In his final report, General Alfred Jodl wrote, "We were defeated by many things, by American industry, by Allied air power, by Soviet numbers, but also by the knowledge that our enemy would never stop, never tire, never give up. That realization broke us as surely as any bomb." But while the land war was collapsing, something else was happening out at sea. A new kind of weapon was changing naval warfare forever. December 1941, the Pacific Ocean. Early one quiet morning, Japanese planes roar across the sky and strike Pearl Harbor. Battleships explode, smoke fills the air, and within hours, the mighty battleship, once the symbol of naval power, becomes a thing of the past. A new ruler of the seas is born, the aircraft carrier. But while America quickly learns this lesson, Germany completely misses it. As the U.S. starts building aircraft carriers by the dozens, Germany focuses on submarines and a few surface ships. The German Navy, the Kriegsmarine, never builds a single aircraft carrier. It's a mistake that will cost them dearly. By 1943, the U.S. Navy controls the oceans with over 100 aircraft carriers, big ones, small ones, and escort types. These floating airfields can travel anywhere, launch hundreds of planes, protect fleets, attack submarines, and cover invasions. German naval officers can hardly believe the reports they read. One of them writes in his diary, "A single American carrier task force has more firepower than our entire fleet, and they have dozens of them. Each American Essex-class carrier carries about 90 planes, each one capable of striking targets hundreds of miles away. German warships, no matter how powerful, can't even see their attackers, let alone fight back." Soon, the oceans themselves change. German surface raiders that once terrorized Allied ships disappear. Submarines that once hunted now become the hunted. The Atlantic, once a battlefield, turns into an Allied highway, ruled completely by American ships and aircraft. Admiral Donitz, the head of the German U-boats, admits in his diary, "The enemy's air power at sea is beyond anything we can match. Our submarines are hunted day and night. We have no answer." But the carriers are only one part of the story. America's shipyards become machines of miracles. In 1943 alone, the United States builds 2,654 ships, warships, cargo ships, submarines, destroyers, everything. Germany builds only 186. A shocked German planner tells his superiors, "For every ship we sink, they build 10 more. We're not fighting a navy, we're fighting a force of nature." The effect on morale is crushing. U-boat crews, once proud wolves of the sea, now feel like hunted mice. Patrols that used to last weeks now end in days. either with a lucky hit or a watery grave. Allied technology grows deadlier every month. Better sonar, stronger depth charges, constant air patrols. One doomed U-boat commander writes in his log before his final mission, "We are no longer wolves. We are mice, hunted by eagles." The Battle of the Atlantic, which Germany once hoped would starve Britain, turns into a massacre. When small American escort carriers appear, baby flat tops, designed to protect convoys, the last hope of the U-boats dies. Even in the far reaches of the Atlantic, aircraft now patrol constantly. There is no safe zone left. Between 1939 and 1945, Germany loses 783 submarines and over 28,000 crewmen, nearly 3 out of every 4 men who ever served. It's the deadliest job in the war, and in the end, it achieves nothing. Allied ships keep sailing, carrying endless supplies, troops, and tanks across the ocean. America's industry turns the Atlantic into an American lake. Convoys grow bigger, losses smaller, and the flow of war materials to Europe becomes unstoppable. But the U.S. Navy doesn't just defend, it attacks. In the Pacific, American carriers crushed the Japanese Navy. In Europe, American ships help launch D-Day, the biggest invasion in human history. Over 5,000 ships carry 150,000 men to the beaches of Normandy in one day. A captured German officer, stunned by the scale, says, "We could never do something like this. You landed 150,000 men in a single day. We couldn't land 15,000. The truth is clear. Germany is a land power pretending to rule the seas. America is a sea power so strong it also happens to have a massive army. By 1945, the American Navy is the biggest and most powerful fleet ever built. It sails in every ocean, controls every sea lane, and supports battles on every continent. Germany's navy, by then, hides in port, broken, silent, and defeated. Admiral Donitz finally admits the obvious in his last meeting with Hitler. The naval war is lost. The enemy controls the seas completely. We can't move supplies, threaten their ships, or even protect our own coast. And yet, as Germany collapses under America's overwhelming power, in industry, air, land, and sea, something even more terrifying begins to appear. In the quiet deserts of New Mexico, a new kind of weapon is being born. A weapon so powerful that it will change the meaning of war itself. And there, the seventh fear is born. July 16, 1945, Alamogordo, New Mexico. It is early morning. The desert is still and silent. Then, at 5:29 a.m., the world changes forever. A huge flash lights up the sky, brighter than the sun itself. For a moment, the sand turns to glass, and the mountains tremble from the blast. A new kind of fire has been born. The scientists who created the weapon stand speechless. One of them, J. Robert Oppenheimer, quietly says a line from an ancient Hindu text. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The atomic age has begun. By this time, Germany has already lost the war. Hitler is dead. Berlin has fallen. But when German scientists, now prisoners, hear the news of Hiroshima, they are shocked, then horrified, then silent. They finally realize what happened. America had done what Germany never could. Germany tried to make an atomic bomb too, but their program was a mess. They had brilliant scientists, even Werner Heisenberg, one of the smartest men alive, but they lacked money, organization, and materials. Their country was already falling apart. America, on the other hand, launched the Manhattan Project, a massive, secret operation with no limits. They hired 130,000 people, built entire hidden cities, Oak Ridge, Hanford, Los Alamos, and spent $2 billion, around $30 billion today. When German scientists were later shown the size of America's project, they couldn't believe their eyes. One of them whispered, "We were playing with chemistry sets." They built an entire industry. The atomic bomb became the ultimate symbol of American power, a perfect mix of science, industry, money, and determination. It was everything Germany did not have, combined into one terrifying weapon. But here's the truth. Most German generals never even knew the bomb existed. The war ended before America used it against them. What frightened them wasn't the weapon itself, it was what it meant. They thought, if the Americans can build this, what else can they build? After the war, Hitler's armaments minister Albert Speer wrote, "When I heard about the atomic bomb, I wasn't surprised, only horrified. The Americans had already shown they could do the impossible. They turned their whole country into a weapon. The bomb was simply the final proof. The bomb wasn't just power. It was a philosophy, the belief that with enough intelligence, teamwork, and industry, Americans could solve any problem, make any weapon, and win any war." German soldiers had seen this truth long before Hiroshima. They saw it in the endless supply trucks, the skies filled with bombers, the tanks that never stopped coming, and the factories that never ran out of steel. The atomic bomb was only the final line in a lesson they'd been learning since 1942. You cannot defeat a nation that turns its entire economy, its factories, and its people into one giant war machine. After the war, captured German officers admitted this openly. They no longer blamed bad luck or poor strategy. They simply knew they had been outmatched from the start. At the Nuremberg trials, General Alfred Jodl, waiting for his execution, wrote, "We underestimated America. We thought they were soft, too comfortable to fight a real war. We were wrong. They fight like they build cars, with order, precision, and endless production. You cannot stop an assembly line with courage." Another German leader, Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, was more bitter. "They didn't defeat us with better soldiers. They buried us under mountains of equipment. There's no honor in that, but it is victory." And finally, Heinz Guderian, the man who created Blitzkrieg, reflected, "The Americans taught us that modern war isn't won by the best army. It's won by the best system. Their industry, their logistics, their training, their technology, everything worked together like a machine. We were craftsmen. They were engineers. And the machine won." From the ashes of Germany's defeat, a final realization rises. The true power of the United States was never just its weapons, but its ability to build the future itself. The notebooks survived. Old diaries hidden in coat pockets. Letters tucked into uniforms. Memoirs written in prisoner camps. Interrogation notes stored away in dusty boxes. Today, those words rest quietly in libraries, museums, and private collections, fading ink on yellow paper. They are the personal thoughts of the men who once led armies, commanded fleets, and built the machines of war. And through all their writings, they say the same thing. Not in propaganda, not in excuses, but in honest, tired words written after the war was over, when the truth could finally be spoken. They feared America, not just its soldiers, but everything behind them. They feared American industry, the endless factories that never stopped. They feared American air power, the bombers that darkened the skies. They feared American technology, inventions that changed the battlefield overnight. They feared American logistics, the constant flow of supplies, fuel, and food. They feared American manpower, an army that never ran out of men. They feared American naval power, ships that ruled every ocean. And most of all, they feared American ingenuity, the ability to solve any problem, build anything, and find a way to win. These 7 fears were not separate things. They were all parts of one single truth. America had turned itself into a weapon, not just its military, its whole civilization. Every factory, every farm, every research lab, every training ground, all worked for one purpose: victory. Germany could not match that. No one could. The Soviets had numbers. The British had courage and strategy. But America had something no other nation did: the power to make Allied victory certain. By the end of the war, the numbers told the story. 300,000 airplanes, 88,000 tanks, 3,000 warships, 41 billion rounds of ammunition, 2.6 million trucks. Germany produced only a fraction of that, and it was fighting on several fronts, running out of fuel, out of materials, and out of hope. But these notebooks aren't just about numbers. They tell of moments, small, painful moments, when confidence turned into doubt, doubt turned into fear, and fear became acceptance. For some German officers, that moment came early, the first time American bombers appeared over their cities in daylight. For others, it came when the D-Day landings succeeded despite all their defenses. And for a few, it never came at all. They died still believing in miracle weapons and final victories that never arrived. But for most, there came a quiet, heavy realization. This war wasn't about who fought harder or who had braver soldiers. It was about who could keep fighting the longest. And in that contest, America could not lose. One German officer later wrote, "We were doomed the moment America entered the war. Not because their soldiers were better, they weren't, at first. Not because their generals were smarter, we had great ones too. We were doomed because America could afford to lose. They could lose battles and still win the war. They could lose tanks and build new ones. They could lose men and train more. We could not afford anything. Every loss was final." These 7 fears, industry, air power, technology, logistics, manpower, naval power, and ingenuity, were really one great fear. The fear of fighting an enemy that never ran out, never gave up, and could not be broken by anything Germany could do. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister, wrote later, "The war was lost before it began. We just didn't know it yet. America's entry made our defeat certain, not quickly, but inevitably, like a math problem that could only end one way. That is the lesson hidden in all those old notebooks. The Germans did not fear a single bomb or a single battle. They feared the total power of a nation that could do everything, build, supply, invent, and fight all at once." While Germany struggled to feed its army, across the ocean America's factories thundered day and night. Shipyards launched new vessels every week. Training camps turned ordinary men into soldiers. Scientists solved problems others thought impossible. And a united people poured all their strength into one purpose: to win. The German writers do not sound ashamed. They sound tired and respectful. They understood, in the end, that they had faced something beyond courage or strategy. One German soldier wrote in 1945, "We were told the Americans were soft, that they loved comfort and money. We were told they would break under pressure. We were told lies. The Americans were not soft. They were practical. They didn't waste lives when machines could do the work. They didn't charge blindly. They waited for firepower. They fought like engineers, calm, organized, unstoppable. And they never stopped. That was what we feared most. Not their weapons, not their numbers, but their refusal to accept defeat. You can't beat an enemy like that. You can only surrender and hope they show mercy." Now, those notebooks are closed. The men who wrote them are gone. But their words remain, a warning written in faded ink. They remind us of one truth. In modern war, victory doesn't belong to the bravest or the most skilled. It belongs to the nation that can keep going the longest, that can feed, fuel, and arm its soldiers until the very end. 7 fears. One lesson. America didn't just win World War II. It overwhelmed it.